Most people read scripture as if its central figures were weak saints, but they were anything but. They were embedded in the most powerful systems of their time, some of the most powerful in history, and yet they remained psychologically untouchable inside those systems. I've been thinking about that dynamic, and it is volatile. Let us look at four central figures. Abraham, for instance, negotiated land deals and commanded wealth. He moved through Canaan as a respected tribal leader, yet when the king of Sodom offered him the spoils of war, he refused, unwilling to let the king say, "I made Abraham rich." Joseph centralized food control under Pharaoh. He designed an economic strategy that consolidated power at the highest level of Egypt. Yet before that, he refused private compromise in Potiphar's house. He chose prison over secret corruption. Daniel rose through the courts of the Babylonian Empire. He mastered the literature, language, and politics of Babylon. But when a decree outlawed prayer, he didn't negotiate his conscience. Jesus Christ confronted the moral order under the Roman Empire, one of the most formidable empires in history. Yet he refused to be crowned by political zealots or soften truth before religious elites. He stood silent in front of authority because his allegiance did not originate from Rome. All these biblical figures were not outsiders looking in. They were insiders and participants in the system. But they were non-compliant, and that made them very dangerous. The source of the threat was that they were double citizens, fully here, but not of here. They worked within empires, yet their identity was not issued by those empires. Some were wealthy, but were not defined by wealth, political, but not pocketed, influential, but not dependent. Systems run on control, fear of loss, desire for status, need for approval and validation, and attachment to comfort. But what do you do with someone who can lose everything and remain intact? That removes grip, and when grip disappears, control disappears. What fascinates me is the real tension they lived in. They were not rebellious, but they were not passive either. The tension came from this. They were physically present in an earthly kingdom, but internally aligned with another. They participated, built, influenced, and belonged, yet they never assimilated. They did not engage in corruption, and they did not surrender their identity. They were unmastered by the system. And that psychological sovereignty is disruptive, because when someone stands inside a system yet refuses to be defined by it, everyone else's dependence is exposed. A clear example is Jesus. He received flack not only from the political and religious elite of his day, but also from ordinary people. The liberty with which he lived exposed how mastered they were by the system. Let's bring it home to Kenya. What if we had citizens like Abraham, Joseph, Daniel, and Christ? Imagine citizens who could not be bribed before elections, manipulated through tribal loyalty, intimidated by status, or silenced by economic pressure and poverty. Imagine business leaders who refuse corruption even if it costs tenders, build wealth but are not enslaved by greed, and speak truth without fearing loss of access. Imagine public servants who value conscience above position, would rather resign than comply with injustice, and are internally anchored beyond political survival. That would be transformative. Systems are reformed when enough people inside them cannot be controlled by fear, status, or access. The problem is that too many Kenyans are still gripped by the same levers of control. Now, let's turn to the church. Imagine if it lived in that tension. In the book of Revelation, the church in Laodicea is described as lukewarm, neither cold nor hot, comfortable, self-satisfied, and unaware of its poverty. That imagery is very pervasive in our day. If the modern church truly embodied the liberty of Abraham, Joseph, Daniel, and Christ, it would not soften conviction to protect a platform, dilute truth to keep followers, or measure success by visibility alone. Instead, it would stand for integrity, courage in media spaces, and real spiritual authority in public life. Instead, much of what we see is people-pleasing spirituality, large platforms, playing it safe, testimonies centered on personal fulfillment and miracles, and God framed primarily as a fulfiller of desires. The tension is missing. The early figures lived inside empires without being shaped by them. They were not owned by the system. Yet much of today's spirituality has assimilated into it, and the church has, at times, been drawn into the mundane demands and comforts of daily existence. That's the difference.